Today, we'll talk about how to predict rallies with smart money concepts and order blocks. We will do a top-down analysis, starting from monthly structures. After all that, we will focus on weekly, daily, and hourly charts. This will be a great trading video. Hope you do not miss it. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading, or even swing trading, and looking for special trading strategies, check out my free trading course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. Since I get many requests for rallies, imbalances, and how to use order blocks for rally or trend reversal detection, I decided to make another video about it. I already made great videos for this. Let me analyze the latest price action and how to trade them. Let's get back to the origin, the monthly charts, where everything actually starts. After an all-year drop, Bitcoin started to hold itself on this mega monthly imbalance. This imbalance was never broken. The price held by it. It was a strong area. If you remember the super balanced price range video from a couple of weeks ago, I was watching this monthly balanced price range for a long time. I always keep these key structures on my chart as my reference points. Let's check out the weekly chart. You can also notice the weekly super balanced price range which collides with the monthly one. Just go and watch my previous videos. I kept identifying this for weeks. Let's go down to the daily charts now. Let's fully understand how it all started and how the mega rally from 15K to 30K started at the beginning of 2023. Price got into a very long accumulation phase right above the monthly imbalance. You already know all of this, but you lack the experience. Then the price was manipulated by hunting the equal lows right above the imbalance and started yearly expansion. Again, this was the ignition of the yearly rally. Let me repeat what happens. This is what I trade most of the time again and again. Price comes close to a demand or supply. Then I watch the liquidity and wait for the hunt, which is also the manipulation of the power of 3. Then I seek an entry. Nothing complicated. Let's have a much closer look at what happened. The same things over and over. Once the price is manipulated after the equal lows hunt, the structure is shifted. Here is my tip. Right after a mark structure break, change of character, break of structure, mark structure shift, new break, or whatever you want to call, draw your premium and discount. It will give you algorithmic levels with EQ level. I had a great focus on this daily super balanced price range, which actually created the first leg of the rally. What else do we have here? The breaker block. And the daily order block is right inside the breaker block. And the other tiny imbalances. So basically, we have a layer system here. Many structures collide with each other. More importantly, the price is in the discount and right below the premium discount EQ level. These are great places for starting rallies and huge movements. Let me talk again about demands and supply. Remember, these are just simple zones. We have no idea what will happen when the price comes here. If the demand holds, such as it wicks below and get back in, I still consider these usable areas. But if the demand is fully broken with a very powerful break, then it is a failed demand. It actually becomes a flip, an inversion to look for short positions. Okay, still in the daily chart, but getting much closer to the latest price action. After the structure shift, the price makes a secondary break, which is actually the first break of structure. Until this point, nothing complicated. The price jumped from monthly imbalance with the power of 3 and heading upwards. Again, placing my premium and discount tools to get ideas about cheap and expensive prices. If I had to use one single tool, premium and discount will definitely be one of them. We already discussed the importance of this order block and the imbalance. Going back to all my previous videos, I kept talking about this order block, the same imbalance, balanced price ranges, and all these demand areas. Why? So simple. In high time frames, I was always bullish. It is simple price action 101. Let's check out other structures. Notice these BPR zones in the discount area. In my opinion, these were very valuable entry zones that price never pulled back. Why did the price react here then? Let's check it out. Price is in discount, supported with daily order block, and the weekly and monthly super balanced price ranges. In the masterclass, I'll teach in depth order placing techniques that will make you never miss trades. However, as a simple technique, why don't you divide your orders into pieces? This is a technique that I was using it for years. You can divide your 1 hour into 3 pieces here and place them into an important reaction zone starting with the EQ point. In the masterclass, I'll teach specific places to place limit orders with proper stop loss. Until then, I'll leave you to study this chart. Now, we are looking at much deeper charts within 4 hours. Notice these equal lows. Does it remind you of something? The exact same chart with daily, the power of 3 manipulations around the demand zones. Price accumulates right above the imbalance, super balanced price ranges, and the daily imbalance. Then the equal lows hunted here with the manipulation phase. Let's assume that you made this entry and stopped out. As you can see, price did not make a structural shift here. You can look into lower time frames inside the manipulations, which I actually traded a lot right here. But as a high time frame swing entry, there was no total confirmation yet. However, I do entries like this from time to time. There is nothing wrong with trying things. I do not seek confirmation, or I do not combine high and low time frames all the time. I can do whatever I want. But what do I do all the time? I am always on risk management. 7/24 risk management. If I do not combine high and low time frames, I reduce my risk. That's simple. I have a risk management barometer in my mind that keeps shifting side to side due to number of confirmations. Now later on, the price makes another equal loss. The price obviously wants to top that daily order block and get into the discount area before the big move. It basically makes a secondary manipulation here. It does not happen every time, but in this case it happened. Remember, price will do whatever it wants. We have no control over it. We can only control our own risk. This time the structure is shifted and it leaves this breaker block with giant imbalances below. And this time it flies away without a proper pullback. Again, the simple trick of entering these trades is using multiple divided orders with right placed stop losses. Okay folks, another adventure ends here. As always, all these trading methods are suitable for scalping, day trading, or even swing trading. I believe that it will be really helpful in your trading life. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.